Welcome back, focused learners, to another explainer. Today, we're diving into some absolutely fascinating source material all about nature's ultimate living tank. If you've ever wondered how certain plant eaters manage to survive in a world heavily dominated by the most terrifying apex predators in Earth's history, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to unpack the incredible evolutionary engineering of the Ankylosaurus, focusing specifically on exactly how it survived these vicious predator attacks. Plus, we'll be exploring a really cool thought experiment. What would our modern world actually look like if this armored giant was still roaming around today? Okay, let's dive into this. How exactly did a slow, kind of clumsy-looking plant-eating dinosaur manage to terrify a mighty apex predator like the Tyrannosaurus rex, right? In a prehistoric landscape where speed and razor-sharp teeth usually decided who lived and who died, the Ankylosaurus took a completely different evolutionary path. It didn't outrun its enemies, and it sure didn't outhunt them. Instead, it literally became an impenetrable fortress. To understand how it pulled this off, we really need to look at the exact tools and biological blueprints that made this creature an absolute masterclass in defensive survival. Section 1. Meet the living tank. To really appreciate this animal, let's travel back in time for a second. We're zooming in around 68 million years ago to the swampy, super dense forests of what we now call North America. The climate is warm, the vegetation is thick with ferns, and the landscape, it is just teeming with danger. And it's in this specific environment that our living tank thrived, weighing in at nearly 10,000 pounds. To sustain that massive bulk, this dinosaur just lumbered through the thick vegetation, constantly searching for low-growing plants. And here's the crazy part. Despite its incredibly intimidating size, it had surprisingly small leaf-shaped teeth perfectly adapted for a really gentle plant-based diet. It's just an amazing contrast, right? You've got this creature that weighed as much as a medium-sized commercial truck, gently grazing on low-lying ferns, all while constantly looking over its shoulder for the deadliest carnivores to ever walk the earth. And it wasn't just heavy, it was an absolute behemoth at 30 feet long. Its enormous body would literally shake the ground as it lumbered through those swampy forests. At first glance, you might think all this immense weight and length would make the dinosaur look slow, cumbersome, maybe even an easy target for a fast-moving predator. But, as our source material reveals, the predators of the Cretaceous period knew for a fact that this creature was far from helpless. The secret to its survival is actually hidden right there in its name. The word Ankylosaurus comes from Greek words meaning fused lizard, which directly refers to its incredibly tough fused outer armor. Plus, these reptiles belonged to a broader group of armored dinosaurs known as Thyreophora, which translates to shield bearer. So, these names aren't just fun trivia, they perfectly set the stage for understanding this animal's whole survival strategy. It didn't just wear armor, its skeletal structure was physically fused into a shield, making it basically a walking, grazing fortress. Section 2. Surviving the apex predators. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it highlights the intense evolutionary arms race going on back then. Because, you see, surviving those apex predators required a lot more than just being big. It required highly specialized adaptations. Over millions of years, as predators got larger and developed much stronger bite forces, the Ankylosaurus evolved this unbelievable suite of defensive traits. First up, its body was covered in thick plates of bone buried right beneath layers of tough keratin. Actually, that's the exact same material our fingernails are made of. This formed a shell that theropod teeth simply could not pierce. Second, the armor was so extensive that even its eyelids were heavily armored. Just imagine a predator trying to find a weak spot, only to realize, nope, even the eyes are bone. And finally, and this is absolutely crucial for its survival mechanics, its body sat very low to the ground. This super low center of gravity completely countered the hunting tactics of large theropods. It made it incredibly difficult, honestly nearly impossible, for a predator to bite and flip the Ankylosaurus over to get to its soft, unarmored underbelly. But an impenetrable shield is really only half the story. Down at the end of its tail swung one of the absolute deadliest weapons in dinosaur history. Fossil evidence tells us that over millions of years, the Ankylosaurus slowly transformed what used to be just a standard flexible tail into a stiff, terrifying, bone-crushing weapon. This massive club was made from fused bone, and a single, well-aimed strike from it could break a predator's bones instantly. So it wasn't just playing defense, it was fully capable of crippling or flat-out killing anything that dared to attack it. And this brilliantly illustrates why this herbivore was so highly respected in the animal kingdom. When you compare the legendary bite force of a T-Rex to the devastating swinging impact of the Ankylosaurus's tail club, you've got a true clash of titans. The source material makes it super clear. Even the mighty T-Rex had very good reason to be careful and keep its distance. Think about it. A broken leg for a T-Rex meant it couldn't hunt, which basically meant certain starvation. The Ankylosaurus didn't even need to kill the T-Rex. It just needed to make the economic cost of attacking way too high. And with that tail, it absolutely did.
Section 3. The day the armor failed.
So, despite being so perfectly adapted to its environment, heavily armed, and completely capable of fending off the most terrifying predators on the planet, physical armor can only protect against physical threats. It literally cannot protect against a changing planet. Around 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid slammed into Earth near modern-day Mexico, introducing an unstoppable force. The immediate aftermath was just catastrophic. Wildfires swept across the forests, massive earthquakes shook the planet. But the real killer for our living tank actually came in the months and possibly years that followed. All that dust from the impact blocked out the sunlight. And without sunlight, the thick ferns and low-growing plants that the Ankylosaurus completely relied on, they began to die. The entire food chain collapsed. Nearly all non-bird dinosaurs, including our heavily armored Ankylosaurus, disappeared forever due to starvation and a completely ruined ecosystem. Which brings us to Section 4, Adapting to the Modern World. But our source material invites us to play around with history a bit. It presents this fascinating what-if scenario that lets us imagine a totally different outcome. So, what if they never went extinct? Imagine for a moment that a small population of Ankylosaurus somehow found shelter in some incredibly dense forests, or maybe highly isolated valleys, where just enough plants stayed alive to sustain them through that long, dark winter. Over millions of years, these resilient little survivors could have continued their evolutionary journey. They could have gradually become entirely new species of armored giants, living right alongside early mammals, and eventually coexisting with us, modern humans. Now, if they had survived into modern times, human infrastructure would have had to look remarkably different. The source paints such a vivid picture of what these everyday encounters would be like. Imagine driving down a highway in Canada and seeing these bright yellow warning signs that read, "Caution, Ankylosaurus crossing," or in our national parks. We wouldn't just have bear rangers, we'd need highly specialized rangers trained specifically to keep tourists at a safe distance from a 10,000-pound walking tank. And agriculture? Oh man, farmers would have to invest in incredibly reinforced fencing just to stop hungry, wandering Ankylosaurus from marching into their fields like giant living bulldozers looking for a midnight snack. Let's move to and see how this builds. Because it's not just our infrastructure that would change. The animal itself would have had to adapt, big time. Today's Earth is much colder, and it's far more crowded with mammals, cities, and roads than the Cretaceous period was. To adapt, our modern Ankylosaurus might have evolved thicker, fuzzy coats to survive those colder climates. It probably would have developed lighter armor, too, just to move more efficiently around human obstacles. And most incredibly, scientists theorize that later descendants might have even developed herd behaviors. Instead of being these solitary wanderers, they might group together, swinging their tails in a coordinated defense to protect one another, especially their babies, from modern-day threats. The scientific impact of having living Ankylosaurus today would just be staggering. Instead of just studying dusty fossils, biologists could observe directly how such enormous animals sustained so much weight on their legs while remaining highly mobile. Engineers in the military and automotive industries, they would undoubtedly be trying to copy the structural design of that fused bone and keratin armor to design stronger vehicles and protective equipment. And historically, Charles Darwin might have used the living, breathing Ankylosaurus with its highly specialized modern adaptations as a prime, undeniable piece of evidence for his theory of evolution. Which brings us to a final, really provocative thought from our source material. We've spent this explainer looking at how the Ankylosaurus evolved to become the ultimate survivor, perfectly designed to thwart apex predators. But life for a modern Ankylosaurus would not always be peaceful. We humans have a pretty rough track record of driving giant animals toward extinction through hunting and rampant habitat destruction. So the ultimate, strangely poetic irony is this. An animal powerful enough and armored enough to scare away a hungry T-Rex might in the end still struggle to survive the relentless pressures of modern humanity. It kind of leaves you wondering who the real apex predators are today, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, Focus Learners. Keep exploring and keep questioning the incredible world around us.